Okay, how we doing, guys? Back again. Today we're going to talk about the Japanese internment in the United States of America. This is chapter 25, and this was actually the end of section 3, but I didn't get to it last week, so we're just going to kind of do this quick little section. Mainly, there's just a few different slides that I'm going to be talking about. There's going to be a lot of pictures that we're going to look at, and then there's just going to be a quick little video clip. So it shouldn't be a long one, it'll be a quicker one. So let's jump in right away. FDR signed an executive order in 1942 that allowed the military to declare the West Coast a military zone and evacuate all people of Japanese ancestry to internment camps. That even means if they were born in America. Whether either they're born in Japan or America, they were put into internment camps. Many Americans believed that the Japanese Americans would not remain loyal to the United States. During this time, 120,000 Japanese Americans who lived on the West Coast were ordered to leave their homes and were relocated in 10 large camps. In the remote, probably desolate areas surrounded by armed guards, barbed wire. 2/3 of these Japanese were native-born Americans. 2/3 were native-born. This next picture gives you an idea of where these camps were. You have you're gonna look for triangles and squares, and a square in the middle. So these were the different camps that were used. The stars were the Justice Department's United States Army or other facilities. You see, Fort Lincoln back in 1940 was still operational. Today, now it's just it's a state park. So as you can see, there is quite a few areas in the West that were used in some way or another for an internment camp for Japanese. So we're going to jump to this next one. We're going to start the clip, the video. It's only a few minutes long, and then we'll jump into some pictures.
41. The Empire of Japan launched an attack on the U.S. naval base at Pearl Harbor. In the following months, hundreds of thousands of Japanese were rounded up and sent to internment camps under suspicion of disloyalty to the United States. But the feelings that paved the road to internment began long before the attack. For more than 80 years, Asian immigrants were viewed as economic threats, spurring various laws that effectively banned them from the country. For those who made it to America, the lingering resentment culminated after Pearl Harbor. Motivated by vocal outcries from politicians and military officials, FDR signed Executive Order 9066, empowering the U.S. Army to designate areas from which any or all persons may be excluded. He later formed the War Relocation Authority to establish 10 permanent camps, housing nearly 120,000 Japanese Americans, mostly from the western United States. 2/3 of those interned were native-born American citizens. With only 6 days to dispose of their possessions, residents were forced to sell their belongings and even their homes for small sums of money. Internment camps were often situated in isolated deserts, prone to harsh weather, and surrounded by barbed wire and guard towers. Within the barracks, internees lived in small one-room apartments with little privacy and constant surveillance. They were only given a standard army cot, blankets, and a small heating stove. Despite these difficult living conditions, internees tried to establish a sense of community, creating newspapers, schools, churches, and farms. Even in the face of persecution, young men came forth to join the military. Nearly 33,000 Japanese Americans served during World War II, many of whom became highly decorated for their valor in battle. Yet as the war continued, public opinion worsened against Japanese Americans. Only 35% of the country thought they should be allowed home, once the war was over. This sentiment kept the camps open for over 3 years. On December 17, 1944, the government announced that Japanese American evacuees could return to their homes. When they did return, they found their homes looted and their possessions gone. With work almost impossible to come by, many fell homeless and destitute. At the time, the federal government offered no assistance for those attempting to rebuild their lives. It would take over 40 years before President Ronald Reagan signed the Civil Liberties Act of 1988, paying reparations to each victim of internment.
No payment can make up for those lost years. So what is most important in this bill has less to do with property than with honor. For here we admit a wrong. Here we reaffirm our commitment as a nation to equal justice under the law.
USS Enterprise had proven her steel at the battle.
Okay. Yeah, so isn't that interesting? Looking at that, and while we're looking at these pictures, they're not near as harsh as they were in Germany in the Nazi concentration camps, and I can't even put that in comparison to the atrocities that happened there. But, it still has that feeling, that still has that that idea of locking up innocent people, But in the beginning, it says Asian people from forever has been thought down upon. They didn't like, even back into the, what do we talk about, into the early 1800s, when the waves of immigration in late 1800s and early 1900s, those waves of immigration, it always was anti-Chinese, anti-Asian. So this just kind of builds off of that when this happens. And of course, Japan and Pearl Harbor does not help whatsoever. So here is some pictures that we're going to look at. Evacuation sale during the Japanese relocation. Looking up there, the closing out evacuation sale. So they're closing out. Remember, they had 10 days to get going and getting out. Here is a Japanese American child who is being evacuated with her parents, or his parents. I guess that's a boy. His parents to Owens Valley. Not sure where Owens Valley was, but we can definitely take a look here. Anybody see where Owens Valley is? Oh, right there. See it? By Manzanar. That's where that little boy and his family were being transported. Okay, let's look here. This is San Pedro, California, April 1942. These are fishing boats that were formerly operated by the residents of Japanese ancestry, but they're tied up for the duration in Los Angeles Harbor. So there's a lot of idle, vacant places that were just left while these people were gone. A lot of their stuff was taken by other people and used, and some of their homes were moved in by other people. So yeah, they come back. Sometimes they came back to losing everything. Here, this is a Japanese storefront. You can see the words chop suey there. That's the and Coca-Cola. Oh, and I bet that says I bet it's noodles. I like noodles. So, anyways, original caption was San Francisco, California, with the owner scheduled to be evacuated. A storefront is boarded on Post Street, San Francisco. Yeah. Here is the Granada Relocation Center in Amachi, Colorado. And as we can see right there, down in the southeast corner. Look at these style of housing. It looks like, if you've ever been over behind the Wellness Center, there is married housing for VCSU. It kind of reminds me of that. Small little dormitories that these people were living in. And did you hear? Army-issued cots. I don't know if any of you have slept on a cot before, even a cot at a hotel with even a small little mattress on it. Not very comfortable. And Army-issued cots didn't have mattresses. They were just canvas. Just think of that. For about 2 to 3 years, these people, the Japanese people, lived on that, slept on that. Here is Salinas Assembly Center, Salinas, California. Look at here. This is a big open area, it looks like. You know what? This Can anybody tell me what this, or see what this is? What does that look? This looks like the grandstands here. This looks like a racetrack. Interesting. Salinas Assembly Center. That would be something to look into. If anybody are curious about the history of this and why they chose us or what this actually is, remember, Salinas Assembly Center. If I remember, I'm going to look. Interesting. Wow. Okay. Here is a picture of a cafeteria-style lunch or setting. Look at, they're lined up with their trays and food, and they're going through, and they are being just like hot lunch at school. They're just getting dished up, and they're walking their way through. Here is a look at like the dormitory setting. They called it the interior of the barracks. Yeah, it looks like army barracks. And maybe some of these were army barracks that were transformed into these internment camps. Just think. Oh, look at there. That's, okay, I'm sorry, but that's not an, they said army issued cots. This is not an, I don't think this is an army issued cot. This is more of a, maybe it is. I don't know what I'm talking about. But yeah, look at that. That still doesn't look comfortable. Here, children are at a Sunday school. That's what it says this is. So I'm sure, what religion do you think they are, or what religion? Probably, yes, Christianity would be the one. Couldn't tell you exactly which religion it was, but it definitely would be Christianity during this time. Remember, they also talked about these internment camps really tried to become a little community themselves, and a lot of them had their own newspapers. Here is a newspaper and a man reading it. And according to my sources, his name is Roy Taquino, and he's reading the paper. Next is a picture of the military police on duty in the watchtower at the Santa Anita Assembly. Okay, here is I want to read this to you. You can read it with me. It's very interesting. This kind of, I wouldn't say this is the mentality of all of these, all of the Japanese Americans, but maybe some of these. And it's very interesting the way they look at this. I think that all of us are called upon to make sacrifices. I think that we will be called upon to make greater sacrifices than any others. But I think sincerely, if the military say, move out, we will be glad to move. Because we recognize that even behind evacuation, there is not just national security, but also a thought as to our own welfare and security, because we may be subject to mob violence, and otherwise if we are permitted to remain. By Mike J. Musaoka, Japanese American Citizens League. So he said, you know what? We all are making sacrifices. No matter who you are, as an American, you're making sacrifices. And this is just one of the Japanese American sacrifices that we need to do. And he also says it's not only for the national security of everyone, but also the Japanese Americans, because they could be retaliated on, you know? And that makes a very good point. And if you kind of think of it that way, were those Japanese Americans safe from mob violence? Were safe from persecution or terrorization from people in California in the South, in the West? Absolutely, they were safe. Now, were their conditions fabulous where they were at? Possibly no, or for sure not. But yet they still were safe. Here is a man named Korematsu, and he took the United States to the Supreme Court for this internment. And the Supreme Court ruled that the relocation was constitutional because it was based not on race, but on military urgency. Not on race, but on military urgency. That one's a stretch, because as if I look at it, it looks to me that it was definitely based on race. But the Supreme Court ruled that it was not based on race, but on military urgency. Okay, last one. It would be, about 1944, FDR releases the Japanese Americans, and they're able to go back to their homes around 1944. So it wasn't even before the war was over. We were just thinking about starting to invade Europe. So I was thinking that they were in the war, in these internment camps, until after we bombed Hiroshima and Nagasaki, but that's not the case. It was a few years before that. You know what I'm learning as a teacher? I'm learning a lot of stuff too that I didn't know, little tidbits here and there. And in that video, we finally saw that in 1988, President Ronald Reagan apologizes to the Japanese American people. And Congress gives them $20,000 to every citizen who had lived in the camps. Okay. This we will have, I think, you know what, we'll do 2 questions. I'm thinking on the fly. We'll have 2 comprehension questions after this. Jump in there, answer them, and you will get credit. All right. We will be talking to you shortly.